Hello and welcome back to episode 7 of our Q&A series. What a great series this is becoming. Thank you all very much for the latest questions. And as always, we're going to go through them. Now, there are a few questions in here that I have missed. The reason being they're questions that have been asked most times. So if I didn't answer your question, chances are it's probably been answered. So feel free to message me or go through our past episodes. But if you message me, I'll try and find which episode it was and send you the link. Now, as always, in the description is each question listed with a timestamp to skip to that specific question, because I know not everyone is here to hear me ramble for ages as I usually do. So skip straight to the one you're interested in. Now, if you want your question answered on this series, the easiest way to do it is leave a comment down in the comment section of this video, and we'll go back to it before we do this video. And on a Tuesday, it was a Wednesday this time, I'm recording this on the day it's going to actually go up on YouTube. So if you're seeing this is what I look like still, and I'll still be in the office by the time you're watching this as well. But on Instagram on a Tuesday, we put on our stories the questions box, and you can enter it in there. Alternatively, you can email us, so info@Kibble Watches. Just please specify it's for the Q&A video, otherwise I will respond to you thinking it's another question I get. So I hope that answers how you get your questions on this episode. And before we begin, thank you very much for an incredible week. I'm recording this the day after the drop video was recorded, and already things are flying out the door, so thank you very much. It is crazy at the moment. If I look exhausted, that is why, so do forgive me. Now, what is on wrist, because I almost always forget this, I am wearing the same watch I wore in the last video, which you haven't seen yet because this comes out before, so I need to stop referring to that. But a stunning 9-carat gold Rolex Oyster from 1935. This would be one of the first Oyster cases that was ever made. And in the original advert where this watch was shown, you can see this reference. So it's a really special watch. I'm excited to bring it to you guys. It does come with its original period correct bracelet, not a Rolex bracelet, but a period correct 9-carat gold bracelet. It's going to be a stunning piece. Already questions are coming in. So if you are interested in this, email me, message me, WhatsApp me, whatever is easiest for you. But without any further ado, let's get to the questions. So question 1 comes from YouTube, the account name Mobile Phone. Thank you for the question. Thoughts on the new Tudor Royal? Future classic or 70s inspired Frankenstein? Just ordered one as a first proper watch. Well, first of all, congratulations on that purchase. What an exciting time. I remember the first time I got my first serious sort of Swiss watch or serious watch in general was exciting. So that's the first point, really. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks, because as long as you like it and as long as it lives up to your expectations, that's all that matters. But that being said, my thoughts on it. I think it's an interesting looking watch. I think it's going to do well for Tudor. My personal opinion, I'm not a huge fan. I think for the price it is, I would rather try and find a nice vintage example. But then again, I am a vintage guy. You know, I like vintage watches. I have a few modern, but I think as far as, you know, brand and build quality and movement and spec, Tudor hands down are incredible for their price, so you're definitely not going to be disappointed in that department. Design wise, again, no one can say for definite. I mean, we're seeing the trend come back to smaller watches. Few people predicted that, but there's so many trends in the watch market now that no one ever could have predicted, right? And that's the point. We don't know where things are going to go. So right now, I think it's an interesting looking watch. I don't think it's going to age particularly well personally, but I could be very wrong, and I hope I am for your sake. So enjoy that watch. And do send me a photo on Instagram. Question 2 from YouTube by My Watch Venture. How much of a headache is security for you, and what precautions can you suggest? Regards, Spencer. Thank you very much for the question, Spencer. This is actually a question we get asked a lot, especially by aspiring watch dealers. Now, if you go on my YouTube channel, you will find a Q&A or an interview I did with Paul Thorpe of YouTube. A lot of you will know him. And I did this probably 5-6 years ago, so a long time ago, before this became anything serious for me. And that was one of his main subjects and one of my main questions as well about security. For those of you who follow him, you know it's something he talks about a lot as well. So go back and check that out. Probably a trip down memory lane for sure. But in regards to what we do, obviously I can't talk too much into it for obvious reasons, but obviously you want to be insured at all costs, whether that be personal insurance on what you carry, insurance everywhere, you know, just try and insure everything you can. Always. Secondly, you definitely need a good safe. Don't cheap out with one of those sort of very light eBay safes, or even, you know, personally I would say anything under 150 kg, you need something at least over that. Right now we have a very good safe in the office. We also have a safety deposit box with a bank, which we've not disclosed to anyone, and that will always stay that way. And again, you need to think of these kind of things. So there's that. And also safe-wise, we're hopefully getting a new safe at some point soon, a bigger safe. So you always need to be considerate of where your watches are, considerate of how much of value is in one place. Don't put everything in one place, spread it out, use safety deposit boxes and things like that. And also just be smart, be smart with Instagram. For example, we put a lot of stuff on Instagram. You see on Instagram all the time, we're showing things. We even show where we are sometimes. But what no one realizes, and I get called out on this a lot, is we don't release that footage usually then at all. So if we're showing we're in somewhere nice doing a wrist roll, that gets released usually an hour or two after it's been done. And we don't usually tag location, but if we do it again, we're no longer in that location. So you need to think of these things because there are crafty people out there, and you've just got to be really careful. And it's the kind of industry you need to be aware of that when you get into it. I know many dealers who have unfortunately been the victim of robberies and even armed robberies at home and some very, very, very scary things. And I think you need to know these stories before you get into it, so you're very aware of what the risks are. I was very aware of it going into it, and it was the risk I saw worthy to be able to do what I love. Now, I take all the precautions, but I'm also very aware something could happen. So don't overstress it. That's my next point. Be aware, be vigilant, be smart, but don't put too much of your time and thought process into it, because you will not enjoy this job. You will not enjoy this industry, and you will see every single customer as a potential threat. It's not a way to do it. So I hope that answers your question. If you want more specifics, feel free to ask and we will try and help you where we can. Question 3 from the Groovy Socks. I hope you have Groovy Socks, otherwise that name's a letdown. How do you become an AD of watch brands? Plus, can you still do it if you're a grey market dealer? So how do you become an AD of watch brands? Well, you need first of all, you need a location or a shop or something that the watch brands can see you're going to sell from. You also need ideally a track record of sales so they can see how much you've done. And then you also need brand recognition. So, for example, if you are a retailer of Michael Kors and Hugo Boss and you contact Rolex to try and get an AD for Rolex, they're not even going to reply to your email. You need to have other brands in there. So often what companies will do is they will slowly build up the brands they get in. They'll get in some entry-level brands that usually you can get a little bit easier, still not easy, but stuff like the Swatch Group, Tissot or Satina, or Mido, brands like this where they're not as strict, but they still want obviously a lot of history, ideally. Once you get those brands, you can start leveling up within the groups. If you get into the Richemont group, the entry level, you can start working up, eventually maybe get Cartier and Jaeger-LeCoultre, and same with the Swatch group, eventually get up to Omega and Blancpain and things like that. So that's how you do it. That's how you become an AD. It's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of connections, and it's a lot of track record, really, more than anything. And even then, you're not going to be guaranteed a lot of brands sort of like Rolex and Patek. They're not just going to go into, any old place, because they have radiuses, and if you're within, most brands have this actually, but if you're within a radius of X amount of miles to another shop who also has that brand, you won't get it, especially if they're already established, already had that brand for a long time. The next part of your question, how do you still do it if you're a grey market? Can you still do it if you're a grey market dealer? It really depends. If you're a grey market dealer first, probably not. The reason being, you're not going to be as appealing of a target, because you have a registered group of buyers who are used to buying usually grey market or pre-owned or whatever it may be. So them switching to brand new retail, it's not usually the shift people take. So chances are very low. It does happen, it can happen. You also do see sometimes authorized dealers selling brand new pre-owned watches as well. I use the term brand new pre-owned, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's how you get away with the grey market. So I think that needs the grey market defining. Grey market is someone who sells a brand new sort of stickered Rolex for whatever the cost price is. A secondary market dealer like what I am, even if we get a brand new Rolex fully stickered, chances are it's a one-off that we won't have for another 6 months or a year. Whereas the most of what we sell is pre-owned. So I'm a pre-owned watch dealer, I'm not a grey market dealer, and there's a distinction there. Grey market dealers are seen as people who buy things very cheap and flip them and all this kind of stuff. It's a different sort of connotation within the watch world. Hope that explains that. And can you still do it? Potentially, but very, very difficult and very, very unlikely, and it also depends on what brand you're trying to get. Before we get to the next question, change of light, we forgot to turn it on, so sorry if it was a little bit dark at the start or a little bit too light now. We'll have to deal with it. So question 4 from my dad, thank you. When lockdown ends in June, what will be the first thing you do? And apologies if you can hear my laptop trying to take off, but Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the UK's been in lockdown for a while and we've finally got the roadmap out. Let's all hope and keep our fingers crossed that it's actually going to go ahead as planned, because we all know nothing has gone ahead as planned so far with all this. But when it ends, the first thing I want to do is go for a meal out and have a drink out and about. That would be lovely. And then also go see my family. I mean, I haven't seen them in forever. Obviously, for those of you who know, I'm originally from Leicester and I'm over here in London and in the process of potentially moving again as well, even further out. So it's all very hectic at the moment, but I'd like to see my family again and go on holiday, even if it's just here in the UK, over to Wales or Scotland. Love both of those places and would happily live there if everything could work out in there, but it just wouldn't. So hope that answers the question. Let me know down in the comments what you're going to do when we come out of lockdown. It'll be interesting to hear. Question 5 from S4. Where and how do you source your watches for sale? So we get this a few times, but I'll answer it again. We get them pretty much from everywhere. We buy them from collectors, auctions, watch dealers, you know, even eBay occasionally. You know, we really do keep our eyes everywhere. But for the most part, our watches come from collectors because that's where I prefer buying watches from. Usually you pay a little bit more than you would by eBay or watch auctions or dealers, but you know sort of a bit more about the watch. Usually they're a bit more honest about the history. And also, you know, it's been in good hands because a watch collector usually cares a lot more about the watches than most dealers, unfortunately. So for those reasons, most of the time collectors, and then it goes through a vigorous process. So we receive anywhere from 2 to 10 watches a day, and it can sometimes even be more than that. And of those watches, not all of them make them to the website because obviously you can do the math and you see how many watches go on the website each week. So a lot of those don't make it. Some of them aren't quite to the standard, but are still good. So we offer them on Instagram at a lower price, or we put them into auction. So there's many routes we do, there's many things we do, but everything goes through a vigorous process, first of all, before you even get to see it on Instagram or anywhere. And as I said, most of those you don't even ever see. So hope that answers your question. Question 6, through pictures. Do you know someone in London who can restore watches like dials, glass, case, etc.? So dial restorers, I think there's only a few left in the UK. I can't remember the exact names off the top of my head because I do this off the top of my head. So feel free to email me if that's the specific thing you want and I can try and dig through. But I think there's 3 left in the UK who are considered good, and they specialise in that. You won't find many places that actually do full restorations, including dial restores themselves. Most of the time, the places that do restorations will do internal, external, everything like that, and the dials they'll still send off to one of these 3 people I mentioned. So in regards to who can do the dials, message me, I'll get those specifics. And in regards to everything else, you know, a competent watchmaker should be able to do most things. Now, of course, there's certain brands that are very difficult to get into. You need specific tools. So, you know, you might want to go to someone who's authorized to do them. In regards to who I'd recommend, obviously there's Antique Watch UK, which is John. They're based here in Clerkenwell, but the only thing is they have a lot at the moment and they are taking a while, so just keep that in mind. You know, if you are someone who says you don't need it anytime soon but then harasses every week, do not go to him. In general, just don't be that person, please. It's very frustrating. But if you need it a bit quicker or you want something a bit different, mainly modern, Perry Watchmakers in Hatton Garden. They have done some incredible stuff for me recently, and I'm going to put a video on screen of a Rolex Yachtmaster we just had fully polished with them, and it looks brand new. It's incredible, so highly recommend those guys. They, as I said, based in Hatton Garden. Search Perry Watchmakers Hatton Garden in Google, you will find it. Question 7, C Scott 992. What are your thoughts on polishing watches? So kind of a carry on from the last one. It's an interesting subject. I have a couple of vintage watches in my personal collection that are unpolished, and I intend to keep them that way. That's just personal preference because I like the way they look with the scratches and the wear, but also the story and the fact it's a 1970s watch or even earlier, and I'm not going to ever find one unpolished again, or very unlikely. So it's kind of like a piece of history, being able to see what the original finishing would have been like. So I think when you're talking about that kind of thing, I'd say ideally leave it, but at the end of the day, it's your watch, so you decide. For example, I sourced my dad his dream watch, his Speedmaster. It's almost finished actually, and it's a, you know, Speedmaster's a great watch, but his was not really that old and it didn't really need a polish. It looked fine. But for my dad, he wanted to sort of put in every mark into this watch, which is of course understandable and I think really cool. So in those kind of scenarios, if you don't intend to sell the watch and it doesn't matter about the retention value, whether it's been polished once or twice, get it polished. You know, do what you want to do. It doesn't matter what your watch dealer says is going to hold value or not. If you don't intend to sell, screw all that. You know, do exactly what you want to do. But on vintage, my preference is try to keep them unpolished if you can. you know, if it's, let's say, a beautiful, pristine dial and the case has got a big scratch in it in one place and the rest is fine, maybe get that taken out just to make it a bit more sort of uniform, but in general, try and avoid it. Question 8 from Nate Harben. Any other hobbies you have outside of watches? A question, again, that's been asked before, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, this is my hobby, and it was always my hobby to begin with. I just managed to turn my hobby into a living, which is the best thing you can ever do, so if you have the opportunity to do it, go for it. But that being said, yeah, I used to read a lot. I'm trying to read a bit more again, but I play a lot of video games. I think I said this before. Well, actually, I don't play a lot. I used to play a lot. Now I play maybe once every Sunday or every Saturday occasionally. And I play a game called Euro Truck Simulator, which a few people took the piss out of me for when I said it in the last video. But actually, I think there was about 4 people in the comments who said they play it as well. So there you go. Trucking friends. Question 9 from Pete Smith. Thank you for the question. Hope you're keeping well. Were you parked outside Fears Watches? So, I'm going to put a picture on screen that Nicholas of Fears Watches sent me outside of his building. There was a car that looks like it's got my logo on the side. No, it's not me. I don't even drive, to be honest, so it definitely wouldn't be me, but I reposted it, and the amount of people who thought it was actually me and I actually had a car with my logo on it was pretty funny. But no, fortunately it's not me. I don't know who it is. I don't know what company that is. If anyone knows, let me know. It'd be interesting to know who's got a similar logo. And the final question, and it's going to be a fairly big one, from Pig Sydney 5. How did you begin Kibble Watches? Now, if you want the more detailed sort of pinpoint answer, go to our website, and on our website there's a section called Our Story, and it's been written by my father actually very well, sort of explaining how all this began. But the sort of short story is, I started this business with £300. You know, I didn't have a lot of capital. I was living in Leicester with my parents, and I was working a normal job. I think I was working at Audi at the time, the retailer, not the car company. And I had £300 saved up. I built a website, and it was like, it's kibbletalkswatches.webstore.com, you know, because I couldn't afford the premium version where you can have your own domain. And it was a long ass name as well that never really worked. So that was the first website, and I used that £300. I bought some vintage Seikos and some vintage Oris, because back then you could pick them up for like £30-40, and I would list them at like £70-80. And that just quickly spiraled into something that kept working, because I had the YouTube channel, and I was putting a lot of attention into the photos. Whilst they were terrible, there was a lot of them, and there was, you know, very honest descriptions talking about how the watch is running. I used to use an app on my phone which would measure, you know, how the watch is actually running, and I'd have to leave it running for 24 hours to get that reading, as opposed to a time grapher that we now have. So because of that transparency and the absolute honesty, that was what started the little boost. And I eventually found out of a group called Red Bar, which most of you guys and girls out there will probably know about. And it's a group of collectors that go to these events and just sit and talk watches and show their watch collections. Sometimes there's brands that come along and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's a bunch of watch nerds like myself, and we all just talk watches, and it's fun. So I had the idea of building the business by selling watches for people and taking commission for the process, consignment basically. And it's nothing new, it's nothing revolutionary, but there wasn't really anyone doing it. There were people doing it, but it's not what they wanted to do. They would rather buy your watch at 30% less and then make the 30% cut, or whatever it is they do, right? So I went to these watch events and I explained my ideas to these collectors. I said, look, my name's James, you've never met me, I want to become a watch dealer, I'm going to become a watch dealer. I will sell your watch for you, and I will take a 5% cut. And everyone laughed at me and said, no, you know, who are you? Why would I give you my Rolex? How do I know you're not going to run off with it? And all very, 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 very valid points to those people, who most of which are actually still using me for the service today. So thank you very much. So I realized that wasn't going to work. So I went back to every single one and said, fine, I'll do it for free, and you keep the watch with you. I will come to your house, I will photograph it. And that's what I did. I'd go to their house, photograph the watch, I'd come home, put the listing on, and go online, sell this watch, get extra photos, do whatever I needed to do. And once it finally sold, I would go to their house, usually pick it up and drop it off at the new person's home, or meet them in a coffee shop or whatever. And that person would come with me the entire way. They would pay that person as opposed to me. And in the end, maybe I'd get like 20 quid out of it, just as a thank you, because I did say I'll do it for free. So that's how it began. I had to do 15 to 20 watches like that, you know, just to get people's trust of, look, I'm not going to run away with your watch. You know, I've named this company after myself. I want it to grow. I want it to be my future. And I think people could see the passion. People could see the honesty and truth in that. And thankfully, a lot of those people decided to give me another shot and another shot and another shot. And as I started selling more and more watches, more and more people started talking about it. And Red Bar, very quickly, I became known within the Red Bar group as the watch dealer. which was huge, and I think definitely a huge part of what has made this successful. So I have a lot to thank for that. I have a lot of those people still that I talk to quite regularly, and I thank them very often for it, you know, because without them, the start and the kick and the boost would have never happened, because I would have had to have 50 to 100,000 pounds of capital to get to where I got to within a couple of years, just off the back of other people's watches. So I was very fortunate with that. I jumped on the bandwagon early, and I just managed to capitalize on social media and a lot of other things at the right time. And I say, you know, a lot of it is a lot of hard work. I mean, yeah, 60 to 80 hours a week at least I do. So there is definitely hard work, but there's a lot of perseverance. There's a lot of luck as well. You know, I was very lucky to meet the people I met when I did, and to word things in the right way at that right time to them that made sense. Because some people I would speak to and they go, no, you're not selling my watch. I don't trust you. And then the same person a couple of weeks later, I'd word it different and they go, oh, okay, I get it now. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of luck and there's a lot of factors. So I hope that explains a little bit of the early stages. Maybe at some point we'll do an in-depth thing about how it all began, and I'll write it down and narrow it down, because I ramble a lot, so that would maybe work. But yeah, read it on the website. So thank you all very much for watching this week's episode. Again, sorry if it seems a little rushed or I seem a little exhausted. I have got to crack on with 1,000,001 things right after this video is done, and I still need to edit this video and get it up today. So hopefully I get it all up on time. So we will see you in the next one. Keep well, keep safe out there, and don't forget to submit your questions for the next episode. I look forward to doing it. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.